Hey everybody, we are back ranking all the nations, all the coalitions for their specs, and today it's mechanized. Mechanized. I would definitely say the strongest, but probably also the most hated spec in the game, at least when it comes to 1 versus 1. The hate, that is. The strength, honestly, it is always good to have, simply because in Wargame, infantry is the name of the game, and together with airborne, it gets the best bonus for infantry, which is both veterancy and 4 slots, plus of course the cheaper activation points, right, or less activation points required. The vehicle type bonus, honestly, whatever. It's not useless, don't get me wrong, but it's really all about infantry. And unlike motorized or marines, which also are infantry focused, as I said, they get 2 additional slots on top of the 7 that those two have. But the other thing is, unlike all the other 3, or compared to all other 3 infantry specs, with, I would say, every deck, but at the very least almost every deck, you lose a lot fewer units. Well, with the exception of South Africa, of course, but Mechanized still has access to tanks up to 115, 120-ish points. You get basically access to the entire anti-air category that is tracked, which most of them are tracked, honestly. There's of course some very good wheeled ones, but I would say the majority is tracked. Recons have everything that is tracked, I'm pretty sure, right? Plenty of stuff that is wheeled as well. Vehicles have pretty much everything outside of the transports, right? It's just, you still get a ton of units, right? And pretty much the only thing you lose is wheel support assets, which for some decks is quite a big deal, like Crotals, for example. High-end artillery, like M270s, Paladins, which is not nothing. The heavy tanks, again, is not nothing. And certain recon units, which for some decks can be quite a lot, right? For other decks, it's not that big of a deal. But then you look at, Marines, which have a, lose a lot of stuff, and even a lot of planes. The only spec that loses planes. Airborne, I don't think I need to talk about how much you lose there. Motorized is also very, very strong, but you lose a lot more tanks, and in general, your stuff is just less tanky or less survivable. And you don't have the same, usually as good of a spam, because you don't get 5-point transports. But yeah, Mech is just, without a doubt, the strongest spec in my mind. Not for every deck, of course, but again, on average, right, it is the strongest. Not always, not in every situation, not on every map, but, if we take an average, then I would say, real voice reveal, I would say it is stronger. But let's actually get to it, shall we? Now, as ever, we start with ANZAC. ANZAC, you lose basically the ASLAF transport. I'm pretty sure that's the most notable thing you lose. You still have your Vickers, right? It's a vehicle type unit, but it's still available in mech. Again, one of the things why mech is so good, or one of the few units where the vehicle type bonus is actually quite noticeable. You lose something like you lose your recon special forces. That's another thing that mech loses. They don't always lose infantry type special forces. They pretty much always only get them in helicopters, which isn't always bad. But you definitely always lose your recon special forces. So you lose your NZ SAS. I'm gonna actually say situationally useful instead of stronger than unspec. Because with the availability bonus that ANZAC has, you're almost always gonna upvet everything anyway. So you already have your veteran Commandos 90, which are basically the core of the ANZAC deck. But then losing the access to wheel stuff, you can't really quite make up for it, right? The only thing that ANZAC really gets is Elite Commandos 90, which is very, very strong. But you don't have like IFVs, strong 5-pointers or something to make even better use of the specs. So yeah, I would definitely put it there. It's like quite a few situations where it's quite good, but because you can't just always upbid everything, and because you don't have that much choice, you're gonna fit in almost everything in unspec either way. It doesn't play that differently, and it doesn't get as big of a bonus. Blue Dragons, probably somewhere in there. What they lack is shocks. I think they might get the light infantry, the Hudo Ren. Might as well just check that. But if they do, it's only in a helicopter. No, they only get Kute. And the seals for South Korea. Now they don't get shocks, so they're gonna have trouble town grinding, and the only flamers they get are flame launchers, which are... I'm not a fan of them. So I think good for niche strategy, because they have really, really good spam. The K200 is really good 5-pointer. KAFVs are good IFVs. They also have a heavy IFV with Hachiku Shiki. They get 2 cards of Chumats, which are amazing ATGMs. They get good man pads, right? That's the other thing with mech. You just can't fit in all those weapon teams, all those utility infantry squads. Much, much easier to fit in, and also have a variety of, right? Some decks to have a card of high-end and low-end ATGM, right? One for spamming and just or just dealing with, motor decks. The other one if you actually need something to kill heavy tanks, right? And Blue Dragons has quite some good weapon teams and utility teams or squads, so that is really nice. One of the decks where the AA situation is not great, because you lose your Tansam, but usually mech makes up for having man pads. But the real issue is just the lack of shocks, and you don't really have a tank that can punch above its weight very well. You do have the K1, which is a solid tank, but you don't have something like a 2A1 or the like that is more AP focused, which you sometimes want. Can be a bit awkward to deal with heavier tanks with this deck, when you don't have access to the Q-Maru, when you don't have the Ninja to spot for your Peace Pheasant, which the deck very often relies on as well. Baltic. Let me get one thing straight. If you want to play a spec with Baltic, choose Moto, but mech is by far not useless. Far from it. Honestly, it's simply because the KT exists, it can't be up here, right? Because losing the KT is just ridiculous. It's just the Baltic unit. And doesn't mean that it's bad. You have some decent finished BMPs, BMP 1 for 10 points, BMP 2 for 20 points with a late autocannon, with a late BMP 2 autocannon, making it actually a decent 20-point IFV. You have good shocks with the Panzer Yakari. You have good spam with the Yakari and a good 5-pointer. We have some decent support assets. You even get a 10-second aim time artillery that is also 3 per card in the form of the Telak 91. It's basically a Mista with worse armor, but better availability at a lower price. You have a good tank lineup. The Recon tab is good. You have the Pure and PSV, right? You don't have the best infantry, but you have Sissy, which are one of the better shock squads for Red 4. Overall, I think it can be in here. It's just so overshadowed by Baltic Moto, which is like the go-to infantry spec for the deck. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It's just Baltic Moto is like 5, you can't see it, but I'm hovering above the highest tier, right? It's basically up there is where Baltic Moto is, so. Canada. Oh, Canada. You lose your Wolverine. You lose your Canadian Airborne. Well, you lose a ground transport for them, which is very, very annoying. You have your TH1 and 5, you have Chimera, you have your full tank tab. You lose your Pathfinders and your Recon tab, so you don't get Recon infantry? Right? Yep. A nice Recon tab! You lose your Wolverine and your Bison, so you don't have... I don't know, you do have mortars. And you only get them in the Chinook. You don't have ATGMs in the stack, but you didn't have that to begin with. You can make decent use of the vet bonus in the slots, because you can get some high vet TH1 and 5s. You can fit in those Erics, those Javelins, and those more. But you've You have no strong 5-pointer. I don't think it's worth... The Canadian Airborne in the Bison are just so crucial to the deck. And against it, you don't get shock squads on the ground. And while you do get a TH4 and 5, you don't get ATGM infantry. You can't make a great use out of those slots and XP bonus. Bonuses. China, in a similar spot. You don't get ATGM infantry. You don't get shock squads. Your AA situation is awful because Red Dragon's AA is basically moto heavy. HQ7 and HQ61 are some amazing AA units that you should always bring when you play China or Red Dragons, and you don't get them here. You get okay tanks. You get the Lioranian Recon-Type in the CTQs. You get it. You know what? Maybe I'm gonna put it here. Why? You have actually some interesting vehicle type units. PTCs, the ZEF. Oh, I could have sworn the WC550 would be available in Mech. I'll be honest. I could have sworn it would be available in here. So it's rare that a vehicle type unit that is, even though it's wheeled, pretty much every vehicle type unit is usually available, outside of some transports. I'm actually surprised. I did not know that. Still, you still have the 2800 meter version with the HJ8. HJ8, excuse me. Like I said, you get Liran in the CTQ lineup. Yeah, A situation is... Yeah, I talked about this last time in the armored thing as well. PGC is very strong, but just not very survivable. And for the price, it's just... can be yikes. The other thing is, your anti-tank lineup is just not great. But you do have some very good spam. So honestly, I think there might be some niche strategies. It's in a bit similar spot to Blue Dragons. Commonwealth mech, who might be strong in the land spec. It's either of those two, honestly. I'm gonna put it in S tier. Well, not in S tier, but in stronger than N spec. You have good lineup, you have the commandos, you have Milan 1 and Milan 2s, you have Manpads, you have SAS, you have Fusiliers, you have Warriors, you have TH4 and 5s. Some good infantry lineup. You have the Chimera, which is gonna honestly really nice. You have a good support up. You have the Stormer, you have the Direct Rapiers, you have the Marksmen if you want them. You have the M108 for artillery. You have solid tanks. All you lose is the Jelly 2 and the Jelly 1 Mark III. Jelly 2, of course, is quite a loss, but that's to be expected, right? It's super heavy. Of course, you're gonna lose that in mech. Jelly 1 Mark III, also expected, but also not a big loss. And it's overall, honestly, very, very solid. You don't really lose much in terms of helicopters, because Lynx 3 is the only thing you lose, and it's not a great helicopter either way. The Lynx H7 you also lose, which is a big deal. Recon Tab is not great, but that was never great to begin with. You get some high vet Vickers. You can make good use of the vehicle tab bonus as well. Not so much of the veterancy necessarily, but the cheaper AP cost. So you can fit in the aviary, you can fit in the Vickers, right? And it's gonna be cheap. Czech, oh, they're not doing great. They have some great tanks, but you lose them with Derna. And being a red 4 nation that isn't DLC, you kind of rely on veterancy to make the tank spam good. It's basically just a weaker version of armored. But I'm gonna put it in here because they have some nice BMP2s. They have the BMP2 with Conkers M, right? They have the Vidras. They have Patsorovnitsi, HA-17, Conkers. They don't have Iglas, which is sad. They have some decent 5-pointers. They have reservist spam. They have Kuban Force and Strela, so they have an okay anti-airs lineup, right? They have the Pram, which is really good. So I don't think it's that strong, but they have some nice stuff that I think I can put it here. I think putting it up in niche strategy is a bit too much. Maybe I can put it in here. Cue the Bilbo meme. After all, why not? Why shouldn't I put it in here? You have some solid IFVs and can really make it be fine. I'll put it here. Yeah, you have a 2 armor 5-pointer, so you have some decent spam. But it doesn't have a 50 cal. Nah, I think if I put China in here, I have to put this here as well. Denmark? Let me think. Basically, you use your FKP. You lose your Jäger. That might literally be it. Let me check. Yeah. Okay, you lose your reservist, but whatever, you get the strong 5-pointer with Dragona. You lose the Jäger. But like, those shocks are gonna F, those Ilstotters are gonna F, those Dragoners are gonna F shit up as well. You lose this as well, I suppose, right? Oh no, you don't. I mean, you lose your Jäger and that's it, right? Personally, I'm not a fan of FKP, but you basically just lose your Jäger. And getting all the veterancy now, it's in a somewhat similar spot to ANZAC, but you don't lose a weird transport really. Sure, you lose your FKP in the Jupiter, but only madmen are gonna actually take that because it's so vulnerable, not actually that fast. But then having the veterancy and those, you can get those pretty decent fist squads. You get strong 5-pointers, right, with 2 front, 2 side, and 50 cal. Get some good man pads. Pretty much lose your Jäger. That's it. EGC, it's honestly just a very strong 1v1 or general deck. Stotruppen spam, you get your 2A1s, you get your Rolands, you get your Gepards. What did you lose in terms of stuff? You lose your wheeled Rolands. Oh no. You lose your Tiger. That is a big deal. Obviously, the heavier tanks. Core Marine 95, or both of them really, you lose, which, you know. Fallschirmjäger you only get in the CH53. But you still have access to Panzerfaust 3s in form of the Panzergren 90s. All your Stotruppen are gonna run around with 84s and melt infantry. You have strong 5-pointer with the AMAX. You have your AMX 13s. It is really, really good. ESOM log I would put in a similar spot. The main thing, honestly, to me, that you lose here is just LSTR in the SPW80. That is the only thing that is really notable in my eyes. Sure, you lose your Modern and the Tord, but they're not the greatest tanks either way. And just honestly like playing more around the T-72S and it works. You get your Modschützen and spam, of course, which are gonna be really strong. You still get LSTR and the MI-24D. But honestly, other than that, what do you really lose? Specialnies, you know, Leckerpiroto and MI-17, yeah, but the Modschützen Elite Hordes, ooh, so good and tasty. That's a meme, by the way. Yeah, it is really good. But again, personally, the thing I miss the most is just LSTR 40 and the BTR 80. Eurocorps used to be like right here, right? Or there in mech. Back in the day. Back in 2014. Yeah, I gotta wear 10 points. Oh, it was ridiculous. Panzergrens, 15 points. Ooh, right? But at the same time, while it would, you know, with those Jäger and Panzergrens 50 points would definitely be up here as well. You gotta keep in mind, back then, the meta hasn't developed as much and such, right? People didn't figure everything out yet. That is always something to keep in mind, because we are now almost 10 years into Red Dragon. And in 2014, Wargame was only 2 years old, right? Even if you take previous Wargames into account, there's only 2 years of experience. Some stuff only got figured out in like 2017 or 2018 or even later, right? So it would still be S tier with those changes. But nowadays, well, you have some good infantry, right? Don't get me wrong. But like, I don't know, you lose your Legion 90 and your Rima, you lose your Tigers, all of them, all 3 of them. Yeah, I mean, you have good shocks, but the thing is, unlike DGC, Your shocks don't have mini-me's and 84s for 20 points. Your shocks, your 5-pointer for the shocks has only 1 armor and no 50 cal. That is a big deal. So you can't have the same Stottrippen spam. And the Stottrippen at 20 points, the Panzergrams for 20 points are a good bit worse. They're still great, but worse, noticeably worse. Plus a noticeably worse transport option. You still get your Martyrs, of course. You still get your Milans. You even get Milan 3s now. You get Mistrals now, which is great. You lose your Hawks, which especially for the EOTS Hawk, you might want to take. You lose the Reconvert Cannon and the Dutch AMX-13, which I think is superior. You could have for both decks, there's honestly whatever. But you lose just a lot more than you would in DGC. French has a lot of wheel stuff that you're gonna lose, and that is not, most of the time, not worth it. Doesn't mean it's bad, right? If you know you're gonna go infantry grind on like a closed, small map, better than Unspec, for sure, I would say. East Germany is definitely up here as well. I mean, for the same reason, right? Let's be real. Eastern Bloc mech is basically East German mech with some Czech and Polish units sprinkled in between every now and then. Entente, come on. I've said it numerous times. Personally, I think Entente mech is the strongest 1v1 deck. It is the deck that I'm the best with. Well, not. It is my strongest deck. I'm not necessarily saying that I'm the best Entente mech player. I might be. What I'm saying is, when I'm playing best and I'm playing Entente mech. Without a doubt. Finland. What's the Polish stuff you get? You get some nice tanks. Have is nice and all, but having basically just the mod, like you have the mod, 21 armor, Pave, 14 armor at 120 points, and then you get like the T-72 M1 or something with also 14 armor for 75 points, which is not a great tank at all. You still get your Panther Yakari, your BTR 50s with Yakari, you get your Book M1, you get your Marksman, you lose your Ether 90, but you also don't get some of the Polish stuff. Again, tanks specifically. You don't get... I guess you have Conquerors still. You don't get the Grom and Promet combination, which is so good. You don't get a Syria, but that is nothing like... That's like ASF, whatever. You lose it no matter what. Specifically for mech, you lose some, especially in Italian, you just lose a lot, and I don't think that's worth it. France, I don't think you should at all. Like, you get Chasseurs, you have the AMX 10P. Yeah. No, don't do it. Israel, I don't think it's quite up here. It's very, very strong. You lose your Magland, though? You don't have shocks? So the battery is not that great. It's mainly about the slots, really. Like all those Zeldas, all the Merkava 2As. Merkava 2A veteran Sido is gonna be nice, I guess. 2 cards of spikes. That is really nice. Some people, I heavily disagree with them. And some of them are like top tier players, right? I don't want to name them. I don't want to throw them under the bus. If you're listening, you know who you are. Some people think Maglan are like bad now or like overrated, and there's no reason, like as long as you have Dorban and LRS, there's no reason to really bring them on the field, sort of deal. And might even think they need a buff. I heavily disagree. Screw Maglans, they shouldn't exist, and they're still stupidly strong. Japan. No. Japan don't. They don't get the K200. They have the Nanas and Shiki. And they have the Hachiki or Shiki, and that's basically all you get. Yeah. I mean, you get Chumat, but like, your support is gonna be awful. You only get the basic Hawk, or the iHawk. You don't get a K1. Honestly, Regal type was not even that bad. Just put in like a card of this, a card of those, and 2 not Hachinanas, right? You don't get much, but honestly, you just get everything you need in here. I'm 100% honest. I mean, sure, you'd love to have the ninja, but like, you get some cheap recon that can fight. You also fill in like the role of having something real that can fight, which mech usually lacks. So having that is nice. It is just very perfect all-around recon vehicle. Like, if you could take only one recon vehicle that can fight, Hachinata is a good option, right? It can, in a defensive, like base defense position, sort of deal with some helicopters. It can deal with infantry, it can deal with IVs, it can sneak around, right? It can help push. It is just an incredibly good all-around recon unit. So for that role, sure. You get some shock squads, they're not good shock squads, but they're shock squads, so at least they have 10 HP and they're reasonably fast. Guess you get a Renzo. But you lose your Kumarus, which are basically the thing to play Japan for. You lose your Hudoren. You lose your Tansam, your Kinsam. Yeah, these are the only two units you really lose here. I don't think it's worth it at all. Like, I can't see a niche strategy. Now, Landshut, I would honestly put up here. It gives Germany exactly what it needs in the mech department. The spam, Dragoner. The shock spam, Live Garden. 20 points, Cargos of M2, strong 5-pointer, what else do you want? MG3 and Battle Rifle, of course. Not quite as good as Stormtrooper 95, but they're definitely up there. You get basically everything that Denmark has except for Jägare. FKP, but who cares about FKP? But yeah, for when it comes to mech, it basically gives exactly what Germany lacks, and that's the spam and the shock spam, like the meat shield spam and the shock spam. You have your Panzer IVs for Germany, you have the manpads for Germany, from Germany, the Milans, the tanks, the anti-air. Well, you don't need the anti-air, all you need is the automatic. You get a EOTS Hog if you want that, or, you know, if you going up against A10s, well, like US, and you worry about A10s, then the EOTS Hog is like perfect, or Nighthawks, right? Ideal. NATO is also S tier, very similar to Armored. The most important thing you get is activation points, and you have like a huge amount of choices, and it's just straight up the best bonus you get either way, so of course it's gonna be up there. North Korea, you lose your T90, of course, which is like the key unit. You still have your B5, I suppose. You lose your shocks. You have your Iglabas. You have your VTT 323, which I'm still just, I don't know how to feel about that unit. Is it garbage? Is it good? Is it decent? You get your ATGM infantry, I suppose. You have Iglas. Bo Jong-soo. You're not gonna do too much though. Other than that, vehicle type, I don't think it's too interesting. Like, what do you even like? Like, your IVs are like this thing here. Again, this spam, I'm still not sure how good it is. I guess it's a good also in the MF4. You lose your Pongay too. Still have your John Mao. You have no recon infantry. Get your entire vehicle tab, I suppose, which is garbage. I don't know. I don't think there's like any reason. Netherlands. It's been a while that I played Netherlands on Spec, I'll be honest. Or like just Netherlands. Probably up here as well. You lose your Corps Marinier. You lose your KCT. And of course, you know, wheeled access. That's about it. You don't get ATGM infantry. You only get your Wurplög, which are, I mean, you don't get them in Unspec either, I suppose. But it basically limits your or like reduces really the effect of the veterancy bonus and such, and the slot bonus. With the availability bonus, you get so many Corps Marinier. I think I'm actually gonna put this here. The power boost from mech is not as big, since you lack those utility teams, those weapon squads. NORAD, I'm gonna put in here, not quite down there. It's very similar to US, where don't play mech if you want to win. If you just want to have fun and mess around, go ahead, right? Be my guest. I love US mech for that. It's one of my favorite mech decks, even though it's you should never play US mech. Why though? I'm just gonna talk about them interchangeably. I'm just gonna do them both here. Why? What do you get? Yeah, exactly. Nothing. Your infantry tab, you lose all your shock squads. I'm gonna talk about US first. You lose all your shock squads. You gain high veterancy Bradleys and high veterancy riflemen and stingers. That's basically it. And it's useless. Well, not useless, but it's an incredibly mild bonus. Bradleys are already very consistent because toes just always hit. Unless you need them to. But then veterancy doesn't help either. The riflemen, that's just basic riflemen. Yeah, they exist. I mean, sure, the veterancy is nice. But it's not gonna suddenly make them like Terminators. You lose your Patriot, you lose your Longbow. You lose your Small. Right? So you lose some huge assets that US kind of relies on. You lose your M1A2s or HAs, which usually the go-to tanks, honestly. Usually you go like HA or A2 and then M1 or M1AP. So yeah, in vehicle tab, what do you get? You get a combat, you get the onslaughts, which are fun and all, but usually you don't really need them. CS is cool and all, but it's already great to begin with. You lose your DAB. Your anti-healer options are gonna be really, really awkward. It's just, you don't gain much. Norad, at least, you can fill your infantry slot. You get some flamers for town fights. You get some T8495s that actually benefit. You get a Chimera and a vehicle tab. So you get something. You get the ADATs to mess around with. Norad, sure. You still not. If you want to win, you still shouldn't do it. Basically ever, but it can be. Norad, sure. Norway, what do you lose? You lose your NASAMs. You lose your wheel stuff. Your XAs, your Fallschirmjäger. Those are big losses. I'm gonna put it here. Act, similar thing to NATO. Poland. Oh, Poland isn't great. Somewhat similar to Czech, but I don't get the BMP2s with the Conkers. They don't get Vidras. Let me check. Sorry, let me polish. Ha! You get Commandosi. You don't get Conkers M's. Florida was pretty much similar. I mean, they are honestly kind of similar, but you do not get the Pram or the Conkers M. IFV, and that's a big deal. Red Dragons basically is China plus North Korean units, I suppose. I wouldn't say it's situationally useful. It selects quite some stuff to make mech good work. Scandi, hopefully is. Yeah, you still get fast communicator, but only the helicopter. Scandi though, easy S tier or easy stronger than Spec. It is just very, very good. South Korea. Probably, maybe even like situationally useful. Since you don't really lose your Kinsam or your Tansam, you don't really lose that much by going mech. Use your Habyung 90 or your Habyung both, which are a big deal. And your K1A1, but other than the Tokyo side, you lose some strong units, don't get me wrong. But you get some nice veterancy, some nice slots for all those KFVs and K200s, for those ridiculous rifles, those stingers, but you don't get any GMs. Yeah, no, I think I'm gonna have to put them down here. I don't think it's quite here. South Africa you can't play mech. Sweden has a lot of mech stuff as well, but you lose your Norrlandsjägare. You still get Kustjägare in the helicopter. You have your Fallschirmjägare, but you have your SRF 9040s, you have your RBS 56. Problem is, you don't really get any 5-point transports or even 10-point transport. The cheapest transport is 15 points per man, right? Like, look at this. Sorry. Look at this. I mean, you don't have a lot of choice to begin with, but you can just get this IV or this IV. That makes it really, really awkward. right? You don't get your Amphibial or your TGB or your XA. You lose your Nordlandsägare. You can want to see you get not. I mistook it. Confused with armor there for a second. You lose your 1-1. Oh, you lose quite some assets though. Quite some assets. It is. It's probably fun, honestly, to just spam high vet STRFs. But I think I'm actually gonna put it down there. UK. You have no shock infantry again. You have only the FE432 or whatever it's called, the horrible 5-pointer, and the warrior line, which is. Ugh. You get some Milans, you get some javelins, you get your challengers. You have your SAS. I think it's really mainly the Gurkhas and paratroopers you lose, right? And the Panthers. Sorry, the Lynxes. Again, only this transport is really, really awkward. And yeah, you lose the M270 and the AS90 as well, and the Jelly 2, obviously. SBS, but you don't really lose that much. But the problem is how you're gonna win like infantry fights in towns. You don't get flamers either, right? So I guess niche strategy is fine. Soviets, don't do it. Not even niche strategy. All you get is high vet beam P3s. Really. Sure, being able to fit in beam BT and the SU-122 and the Jalo is nice for cheap. And they get some veterancy, sure, whatever. But it's not worth it. You don't get any good 5-pointers. BP3 is really only great IFV. You really get BT, sure, but it's not worth it. Don't. It's awful. It's no. Don't do it. West Germany, kind of in a similar spot to Eurocorps. It's basically the same, I would say. I was probably better here, since you don't really have some of the wheel stuff to begin with. You don't lose that either way. I don't think it's quite up there. Fletchming and the Fuchs are really nice. Tiger is quite nice. Maybe it should be up here. I think I'm actually gonna put it here. Yugoslavia is basically the same as Entente. Yeah. I think I'm happy with this. So this is the should you play it over unspec part. Now if you go over to the speedrun part, how is it like compared to overall balance compared to every other deck in the game, more or less, on average. Not very in-depth, of course, but just a speedrun. ANZAC down here, Blue Dragon's probably there. Baltic actually really pretty high up. It is quite strong. Canada is, I think, weaker than ANZAC. Like the infantry game is just so weak. China stronger than ANZAC. Commonwealth is like high B tier, maybe low A tier. Czechoslovakia is not that strong. Is it strong? It has better tanks. I think when the infantry isn't really that great for mech, then it just comes out of tanks, and that's where Czechs are stronger. I think Denmark might actually be like pretty decent. This is S tier. This is high A tier, low S tier. I think high A tier. This is like, I would say it's weaker than Commonwealth. East Germany is like low B tier, or maybe even low, or maybe even high B tier actually. This is easy S tier. This is B tier. This is like, I mean, you can probably still make some stuff work, but like with A makes sense. If you get A makes sense, it's like it's probably actually still down there. Israel is like A tier. Japan is really bad. Still got nothing on tricky spam. Landjet is A tier. This is S tier. Probably stronger than this. Netherlands is pretty decent. NORAD is probably still pretty decent too. Norway is kind of somewhere in this vicinity. This is S tier. This is pretty bad. This is not so great. I might actually be throw it there. Scandi is S tier. South Korea is bad. You can't even play that. Sweden's honestly also pretty bad. But at least you get 82 GMs. You're like somewhere in there. You are like low B tier. Soviets are probably just even C tier, honestly. West Germany is somewhere in there as well. Yugoslavia is S tier 2. I'm mainly gonna focus on the like higher part. This is like honestly, this is all like one amalgamation of just don't bother with it. It's not very strong, okay? US is probably still stronger than quite a few of them, just because of their air type, honestly. Commonwealth. Yeah, I think I'm happy with this. Again, this is a speed run. This is not in depth, right? This is just very rough guidance, okay? And for the relative tier list, which I think is more interesting to talk about, this is that. For in-depth stuff, nobody's watching at this point anymore anyway. For in-depth stuff, eventually I will redo probably for most, if not all, decks, like an overview of, okay, how do you build a stack? What are good specs for it? Why are they good specs? Right? What are key units? Etc. Etc. Because if I were to do this for every unit, for every deck in this video every time, it would be like 5 hours long, minimum. Probably more like 10. Either way, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one. Bye bye.